Hello, I'm Rick Stivers, and I'd like to welcome you back to Young Martin's Reels. Today we're going to be working on this South Bend 750. It belongs to a friend of mine, and I'm going to see if the parts that I bought for it off of eBay are going to fix it. They may fit, they may not. From what I understand, there were lots of differences in the South Bend 750s over the years, so whether or not your parts from one is going to fit on the other one is a gamble. So I took a gamble and I bought a new crosswind block axle shaft, and I also went ahead and bought the pinion and spacer, washers and nut, and we're going to see if we can put these parts in this reel. I don't know if it's going to be the same or not. We're going to try it out. So we're going to start off by taking off, well, we took off the handle, and now we're going to take off the side cover. I got this reel in. When I got it, it was frozen, and that was because the crosswind block in it had shattered, and it had been taken apart. Somebody previous to me had taken it apart and cleaned out all the junk and stuck 3 pieces of the crosswind block back in it, and but there wasn't enough to really see what that crosswind block was supposed to look like. So I purchased these parts, and we're going to see if they're going to fit. First off, we're going to take out these 2 screws here. Now one of these, the crosswind block is going to go right here. One of these screws is actually bent, this one. And we're not going to be putting it back in, I don't believe. I think we're going to be putting one of the 2 that came with the new one. Yeah, see how that's bent? It's not going to go back in there. Now how they broke the crosswind block, I don't know. We're going to see if what we have is going to fit. This is the axle shaft that came with the replacement part, and from what I can see so far, it appears to be the same. So we're going to slide it up. I'm going to take the crosswind block. Now, right now I'm just going for fit. I'm not worried about whether or not it's fitting properly. Again, okay, crosswind block. It's going to go this way with this slot facing up towards the gear so that it fits in here. First, let's see if that post fits in the crosswind block. It does. All right, that's a good start. All right, next we're going to slide the crosswind block onto the axle shaft, which I may need to clean and lubricate it just to get it to go on. This is pretty corroded, but it looks like it's going to slide in. Alright, there we go. Okay, so far so good. We can put the non-bent screw back in. That'll be this one. See if we can get him started in here. That's one. Even if the other one doesn't fit, which I'm pretty sure it probably will, but even if it doesn't fit, we can use it with 1 screw. So let's see what happens when we try to set this back in here. Now, I don't expect this to work very well until we clean and lubricate it. Right now, I just want to see if it fits together properly or if we have binding parts. If it does fit together properly, we're going to take this apart, clean it, lubricate it, and see if we can't have an up and operating South Bend 750 fishing reel again. Well, the head's going up and down, like the spool's going up and down like it's supposed to. All right. I think we may have struck success here. Anti-reverse is functional. Feels a little crunchy, but aside from that, I think a good lubrication may be all that it's going to need. All right, so the parts are in. Let's take it apart, clean and lubricate it, get it all back together. The bale's working good, so we're just going to scrub and lubricate that like it stands. Let's go ahead and take this apart and do a good cleaning on it, put everything back. See what we have. All right. All right, note that I said it felt crunchy. The crunchiness has to do with all of this old grease that's caked up inside this gear. This stuff gets in here and it solidifies, dries up, and once that happens, it's not going to function like it's supposed to, and there's definitely not going to be any smooth operation. Also, this post has got some corrosion on it. The inside of this block, look at the corrosion in that. Appears to be saltwater corrosion. Since this part that I got came from Florida, I would expect that this reel that it came out of met its demise to saltwater. So we're going to take it all apart, clean everything, and get it back together, hopefully in functional condition. There we go. There's the spool off. Let's go ahead and unscrew the spool. We're going to take this all the way apart. Spool. We're not going to take the drag washers out until we get to the spool itself. Then we'll scrub up just the spool. Okay. Now the unfortunate thing is I had one of these, and I broke this housing, and that was when I was first getting started 2 months ago at doing these fishing reels, and I didn't think I would ever be able to find the parts for that reel, so I just chucked it in the trash. Bad mistake, because here I am 2 months later needing that same part that I had to go onto eBay and purchase. So hopefully this one's going to come off. Okay, we need to remove this nut. It's a 13 millimeter. Or it appears to be 13 anyway. Oh, look at that. That one came right off. Now see, the one I was trying to take off, that head would not come off. Alright. And I used a little too much force, not knowing what I was doing. And before you know it, I cracked the housing. Alright, there's those two screws off. Now this ramp comes off. Now you need to identify where this ramp is. You notice you've only got two screws here, so you've only got two ways it could go. It's going to be either on the foot side or it's going to be on the top side. And it's going to be on this foot side. Alright, take that off, which appears to have been totally unnecessary. There's one washer there, and there comes the pinion gear, and the pinion gear appears to be in really good shape. The bushing is a little bit worse for wear, but it's not loose. Well, not considerably loose. Let's try the new pinion that I bought, or used pinion, and see if it fits in there any tighter than that one did. I went ahead and bought it. It was only a few dollars more. So I just knew that if I didn't buy it, once I got into this, I would actually need that part. And I didn't want that to be the case. You know, that one's even more loose than the one that I have. Alright, so there it is. That's not bad from that side. Let's slide this one back in. This one may be the better of the two. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to change the pinion. Normally, I'm not real crazy about changing out used gears to used gears or new gears to used gears, but since we no longer have parts available for this old reel, it's I think it's the best of the two things to do. So at this point, everything is apart. We're going to scrub it down, clean it up. Now remember, I've got extra parts here. So when I get done, I'm going to have extra parts left over on this reel. The axle shaft, though, I think the original is going to be the one I'm going to use rather than the one I just purchased. Okay, so really, the part that I really needed the most was this crosswind block, and it's really nasty, but I think it's going to clean up just fine. Although I'm going to have to take a wire wheel to this one. Normally I use a toothbrush, and I think this one's going to require a little more effort than just a toothbrush is going to supply. So we'll see how it goes. At this point, I'm going to go to silent mode and high speed while I scrub all this up. If I need to stop and explain something to you, I will. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again on the other end. I'm going to move this bent screw out of the picture before it ends up in trying to put it back in. All right? Thank you. Okay, the crosswind block is scrubbed up about as good as I think I'm going to get it. I'm afraid that one day this one's going to do what the original did, and it's just shatter, because it is pretty eaten up with corrosion. But since no new ones are available, I don't really have any other option except to use a used one. So I think it's going to be okay. This reel probably isn't going to see a whole lot of use, although I'm hoping it's going to see some. And but I'm hoping that that's going to fit on there okay. It's dragging. So I've got to clean up the crosswind block a little bit more because it's hanging up on the post. So there's some corrosion inside here that I'm going to have to get scraped free, or else it's going to continue to cause grief. All right, we're going to have to do a little more work on it. Normally, I try to keep things like carburetor cleaner away from my reels because it has a tendency to dissolve some plastic parts. But because I'm going to have to break down and use a file on this, and I don't want to clog the file up full of grease and oil, I went ahead and cleaned the grease and oil off. And I'm going to take this file and see if I can't clean up the channel on this. Now that is a vast improvement, but it's still jamming up slightly on this end down here. So I've got to do a little bit more work on this end. Okay, now in this direction, this slides perfectly well. Other directions, it wants to kind of bind just a little bit. So that's telling me that this post has got a few jagged spots on it as well. So I'm going to have to try to get in there and clean that up just a little bit. It's a little difficult because that post sits down inside these teeth. So I've got to be careful not to be filing on the teeth themselves. And I think those high spots were caused when the other block was jammed up due to probably corrosion as well, and somebody tried to wind it and snapped the crosswind block, which in the process of doing that put some burrs on this post. Alright, let's see if that's a little better. Okay, flip to the other side. Well, that seems to be pretty smooth on that side. Alright, so let's try this again. Okay, right there, we still have just a little bit of binding. Now, I don't know too many people who probably spend this kind of time. Obviously, a professional fishing reel repairman is probably not going to do this because they got to make money. And this old South Bend 750 just isn't worth that amount of money. But I'm putting the work into it because it belonged to a friend of mine. It belonged to his dad. So to me, that makes it worth the effort. Alright, I think we may have it. Let's put a little grease on this puppy and take a look. I think it's going to work just fine, especially when we put a little more grease inside this. Alright, let's go back to cleaning. Okay, at this point we're going to open up the drag on this thing and see what we have for a drag. The first thing we're going to do is take out the snap ring, and be careful because it is a spring loaded. Okay, let's suppose for just a minute that you wanted to show somebody how this spring could pop out and shoot off into the oblivion and not be able to find it. So to make sure to be very careful that you didn't lose it. Well, in the event that you did do something silly like that, like you just saw me do, well, there is a cure. You can take a safety pin and make your own spring. Safety pins are spring steel, and they actually make pretty good loops on this. Alright, so let's go ahead and take out our drag assembly. Let's clean it out in there. This has been pretty heavily damaged by salt water, so we're going to scrub it up as best we can. But it's still very functional. Over the years, scratched it up pretty good inside too. Most of that isn't going to have any effect on anything. It cosmetically makes it not very pretty, but it's still mostly going to work okay. So scrub your reel up, scrub your spool up the best you can, and once you put the new line on it, even the ugliness is mostly gone. So clean up the spool. Especially down inside where the drag washer fits. If you have to use a cotton swab to get down in there good, do so. You definitely want to get it out. All the dirt and all the grime. Don't want to leave it behind. Alright, once you've done that, now you're ready to start putting your drag washers back in. It's rather interesting. This one has one really thick either rubber or leather drag washer, one-eared drag washer, and then spacers. Alright, so start off with your eared drag washer. Well, actually, first thing that was in there was a spring. You get two of these spring washers. Okay, drop it down in there. Okay, drop the other one down in there. And they don't need any kind of special lubrication or anything. They're just springs, tension washers. Okay, so you drop those down in there. Next is going to be your eared washer, and try to get it as clean as possible. This one's got a little tarnish. The smoother the better. With that clean, go ahead and drop it down inside there. If you got it, notice that this has got a smooth side and a kind of a rough side. Go ahead and put the smooth side towards your washer. Alright, we're going to put some drag washer grease on this leather washer. If it's leather, it might be rubber. Either way, we're going to put some drag washer grease on it and lubricate it pretty good, because it's pretty old. Been there a long time. Okay, drop it down. Now you've got this keyed washer. It's got this little key on it right here. See that key? Okay, that is going to have to line up with the key on the shaft. Alright, so drop that in. Now you're ready to put your spring back in, which if you're like me and lost the other spring, you had to make one, can still do it. Just work it in. I'm going to eventually find that other spring, but the shop is a little bit in disarray at the moment. So I'm hoping when I sweep up it's going to appear, and when that happens I will bring it back and install it. There we go. Okay. Not the greatest in the world, but it'll do. Alright, now we're ready to reassemble this reel. First thing we're going to do, bring the body back, and we're going to install the pinion gear. It's got a shim on it. We may end up adding a shim to this depending on how tight the rotor ends up being. Go ahead and grease up your shaft. Put a little bit inside the bushing and slip it up in there. Make sure that it fits all the way up there like that. Once that's come to pass, all right. Now remember where I told you this ramp goes? The ramp goes down here towards the leg. Line these holes up for the screws. There's 2 tiny screws on here. All right, next thing to install. This fell out, so we're going to have to put it back in. Fortunately, the shim is still in there. Leave the shim in place. Go ahead, slide the pinion gear back up. Now, slide your rotor back on. Get it lined up and install the nut. Okay, now the bail will flip. Rotor's tight. Okay, now let's slip in the axle shaft. Make sure that you've got a little lube on it. Not a lot, it doesn't take a lot. The more that you put on, the more it's just going to squeeze out of the hole when you slide the axle shaft in, because as you slide it in, see that gear, see how that grease starts to build up right there? Okay, that's not going down in the hole. That's all just going to build up right there. So let's pull that off. Let's get that excess grease off, because we don't want that building up inside there. It just collects dirt and grease. Okay, we might even cheat and use a cotton swab. There we go. Now let's slide it back in. Oh, that looks much better. A whole lot less grease back there. All right, bring it back out. Seat the crosswind block. Put it in place. Install the first screw. Now we are ready to install the side plate. You've got to line this post up with the slot in the crosswind block. So let's go ahead and rotate it around. Let's put it in the middle. We're going to set this approximately in the middle, right across here, and set this in place. See if we can line that post up in the crosswind block. All right, that seems to fit down nicely. Let's put our screws back in. Okay, reinstall the handle. It's glitch in there anymore. It's all gone. All right, we're going to line this keyway up. There we go. There goes the clicker. It's on the bottom of the spool. Okay, sorry for being a little crusty up inside the spool and having some rust along the bail wire. This South Bend 750 looks pretty good. I'd like to thank you for watching, and Robert, this one's on the way back to you. So, well, hang on, let's check one more. This last thing. Anti-reverse. Yep, anti-reverse is functional. Okay, this one just needs some line on it, and it's ready to go. Back to fishing. If you like what you saw, by all means, let me know. If you didn't like what you saw, and I think there's a pretty good possibility this time that you didn't, then please let me know. Tell me what you think, and I'm happy to reply to your comments. But if you like watching the videos, by all means subscribe, and I would encourage you to do so. Thank you, and that's all for today for Young Martin's Reels.